Well, hello there. Today we're going to talk about analyzing some collision data using our track setup with our cart and wireless dynamic sensor. So I'm going to show you guys how to use some of the technology in this experiment. First, just notice that we have the dynamic sensor actually attached to the cart. It's screwed in, so if this is coming loose, just make sure you ask your teacher for a screwdriver so you can tighten that up. Also, notice that we got rid of the hook and we have a little bumper here because we're going to be colliding with objects. First thing we want to do, I'm just going to take you guys through setting up the sensor first. So you're going to make sure you have this flipped on. You're going to see a green light and a red light. And remember, to connect this, we're going to go to Experiment, in the top corner of our screen. We're going to go to Connect Interface, WDSS, and Scan for wireless devices. Just keep in mind that this may take 2 or 3 scans with your wireless device. So be patient. Just keep scanning until you come across the one that you are looking for. Remember, make sure you are connecting to the correct dynamic sensor. This one's Gauss 44, so I'm going to click on Gauss 44, and I am good to go. As soon as you do this, you're going to want to put your dynamic sensor upside down with the cart on top so we can zero it out and make sure it's set up properly. We're not going to need acceleration data for this lab, so I'm just going to click on the acceleration graph, and I'm going to click Delete. And with all that space, I'm just going to expand my force graph just so it's nice and visible for me. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go into Data, or I'm sorry, yes, you're going to go into Experiment, my apologies, and you are going to go down all the way to Data Collection, and where it says Sampling Rate, this is very important, you're going to change your sampling rate from 100 to 1000 and click Done. Okay, that just makes our sensor a little bit more sensitive, which it's going to need to be for this experiment. After you have your sensor set up, you are now going to click 0 because notice we have a force of 4 newtons, 4.5 newtons when nothing's actually touching the bumper. So I'm going to 0 it out. I'm going to make sure both of the items are checked off and click OK. Okay, so notice my force reading is now 0.001, which is fine. So there's just one more setting that I want to make sure I configure before I start collecting data, and that is found under the Experiment button. So I'm going to click on Experiment, and I'm going to scroll down to Set Up Sensors. And under Set Up Sensors, I'm going to click on WDSS Gauss, or whatever the name of your sensor is. And once I'm there, underneath Force, right here, I'm going to click on Configure. And I want to make sure the reverse direction button is checked off. So mine is already checked off, so I'm good to go. But if yours is not checked off, you want to make sure you click it, and that will check it off. Once it's checked off, I'm just going to X out, and now I am ready to collect data. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to flip this upside down. I'm going to make sure the side with the forced bumper is pointing towards the grating. Okay? So once that is on your track, make sure it's locked in. Make sure it's able to hit the actual barrier there. What I'm going to do, what's going to be very important, is that you pull up the dynamics cart the same distance every single trial that you are doing. So I'm going to pull it up about 20 centimeters, and I recommend that you guys pull it up about 20 centimeters. I wouldn't go much more than that because if you go higher than 20 centimeters, the force is going to become too great and you're not going to get a good reading. So I recommend pulling up about 20 centimeters and make sure, once again, you're pulling up that same distance every single time. So now that I have it pulled up, what I'm going to do is I'm going to click Collect. Now this is important. Before you release the cart, make sure you put your hand behind the blockade so you're kind of stabilizing it and it doesn't shake back and forth when it glides. So when I'm ready, I'm just going to release. And notice I get my graph represented on Logger Pro. Now notice the force was 0 the whole time that I was holding it in place because there wasn't anything pushing on the plunger. And then I get this one huge spike. And that huge spike is where the dynamic sensor actually collides with the barrier. Now I do get a couple of spikes after that, and that's because the cart bounced back and forth and it hit it a few more times afterwards. But what we're really concerned with is that big giant spike with the initial impact. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start at the bottom left corner, and I'm going to click and I'm going to drag all the way to the top right corner of the spike. And I want to make sure I include the entire spike within that dark gray box. So now what we're going to do is I'm going to zoom in, and notice we get a better picture of what's going on with our data. Now I would like it even better, so I'm actually going to do that zoom in again, but I'm going to get a little bit closer to the actual beginning of the collision, and I'm going to make sure I get all of the spike in my dark gray box, and I'm going to zoom in once more. So this gives us a better image of the data that we are collecting. Now, one more time, what I'm going to do is I'm going to look for the point where the cart just comes into contact with the barricade. So I'm going to the spot right where the force leaves that measurement of 0, and I'm going to click and I'm going to drag all the way across to the point where it touches 0 once more. So I'm going for the entire area of this shape. Okay? Now, the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to analyze something called the integral of this shape. We're going to find the area of this shape. Okay? So the way we do that is you just have that entire segment selected, and you're going to click on the integral button right here, which is shown by a squiggly line with the 2 bars coming out of it. Kind of looks like a pi symbol. So you're going to click on that button, and notice it shades in the entire graph. This is a very powerful tool. What it's actually doing is it's telling you what the area of this shape is. Now you may not know what that is just yet, but we're going to look into what that actually means. Okay? So you're going to write the area, you're going to copy that down into your Excel spreadsheet that you created. The next thing that we are going to do is we're going to get some of the statistics on this. So with the same bracket placed there, I'm going to get some statistics. And notice I can move this around wherever I want, whatever's easier for you guys to look at. You can place it wherever you want. And the important information that we want from the statistics button is the maximum amount of force, which you see is mine 42.68. So I'm going to copy that down into my Excel spreadsheet. And then I'm also going to copy down the mean amount of force, the average amount of force, which for my data collection is 21.37. Okay, so we have the area, the maximum amount of force, and the average amount of force experienced during this collision. The last thing that we want to find out is the time that the collision took. So the last button that we're going to click on is this X equals button. It says examine next to it if you hover it. So when I click on that button, what I could do is you can see this black line, it traces the actual data points that we are interested in. Now I want to see how long this collision took place for. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to drag this bar over to the very beginning of the collision where I have my first bracket, and I'm going to look up here at the time in that box that you see that popped up in the top left corner, and I'm going to record that as my initial time, 8.535 seconds. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to move this cursor over to the very end, and I'm going to put it right over the ending point where we got our integral, and I'm going to record the time of 8.560 seconds into my Excel spreadsheet. So from that, you should have all of the data that you are required to collect for this lab. Now what you're going to do is make sure you test each of your materials 3 times and collect the averages using your Excel spreadsheet as you do so. So that would be trial 1 of the blockade. You do it 2 more times for that material, and then you move on to your next material. If you have any questions, just let your teacher know. I hope this was very helpful for you. Bye-bye.